Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for clicking play on one of my videos. Thank you for your loyal support. Although I have a small channel, my subscribers are so loyal that I often have a larger number of people viewing my videos than channels with double my subscribers. So really, thank you guys. You are great. Okay, having started on such a positive note, I'm afraid that we are not going to continue on this same positive note. No, indeed, the next words out of my mouth may even upset some of the more sensitive souls. So again, heed my warning, proceed with caution. Today I'm going to address the issue of the Baka people in the Congo, and because I've seen so many comments over all platforms attacking Harry for not addressing the issue of the Baka people and the African Parks Rangers, I have decided to put on my big girl panties today and tell you the awful truth. And to start, let me say this. I really want to pull Harry over my lap and give him a good hiding, and then send him to rehab for 2 years. I'm really fed up with his conduct and borderline insanity. But this time, I have to be truthful and tell you, Harry should not say anything, and whatever he would have said would not have made any difference whatsoever. And whatever you may think of African parks now, unfortunately, you may not have the full picture yet. And because of your truly innocent ignorance, you guys are all going with the most popular opinion or trend, which is, oh, the poor Baka people. Well, stay with me for the next 15 to 20 minutes and then reevaluate your opinion. First, I'm going to give you some information on African parks. African Parks is the fifth largest nature conservation organization in Africa. That is after African Wildlife Foundation, World Wildlife Fund, Elephant Crisis Fund, Rhino Conservation Botswana, etc. African Parks also has another arm called African Parks Network. And African Parks, as its name should tell you, manages protected areas in partnership with governments and local communities, employing a business approach to conservation. The Networks Division manages national parks and protected areas to ensure long-term sustainability. African Parks has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with deciding which area will be declared a protected area, nor do they decide the boundaries of national parks. I mean, at all. The word national park tells you who the land belongs to. It belongs to the government, the country the park is situated in. So straight away, we are debunking the first myth which had been doing the rounds on social media, namely that African parks are kicking indigenous people off their land or their traditional hunting grounds. That is absolutely wrong. Rubbish, nonsense, and a myth created by social media drama queens who do not bother to do their homework. African parks do not have the power to do that. They are employed by governments to run these parks and conservation areas to make a bit of money out of tourism in the parks, because very few people actually fully comprehend how essential and expensive conservation is. African Parks Network is number 13 on the top 20 conservation organizations in Africa. So, I mean, to make number 5 and 13 needs some doing. African parks are also not working alone. I mean, they can't. Africa is big and vast. They work with a number of other management organizations, NGOs, etc., etc., to provide technical support and research and reports, etc. They are also partnering with governments and communities, and their rangers are usually employed from the area of the park where they are taken and then trained and then placed back. And why is that? Simply because they speak the language of the area. Some of the parks they manage are Akagera in Rwanda, Badengilo and Borno in South Sudan, Bazaruto in Mozambique, Iona in Angola, Mayete in Malawi, and then the Odzala Kakawa in the Congo, and then about 14 others. At the moment, they are managing 21 parks across Africa, of which 4 are in Malawi and 2 in Rwanda and 2 in Zambia, etc. But there's only 1 park they manage in the Congo. So just keep that in mind for now. I'll get back to that, okay? African parks also currently employ 2,119 rangers across Africa. Now, please also keep that figure in mind. In 2020, they employed 1,100 rangers. So as you can see, the number has increased, nearly doubled in 4 years, because that is part of the goal, namely to train more of the locals, to educate locals, and to teach them how conservation can be as lucrative as destroying, killing, and selling a region's indigenous fauna and flora. So, let's move on to the Congo, the only place where African parks encounter the Baka people, whom I will tell you more about in a minute. For now, let me tell you a little about the Congo. The Congo is bordered by Central African Republic, Cameroon, Rwanda, Zambia, Angola, and I think a small piece borders Uganda. But having said that, there are effectively 2 Congos. There is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, also known as the DRC, also known as Congo-Kinshasa, which was colonized by Belgium. And then there is the other part, Republic of the Congo, also known as Brazzaville or Congo-Brazzaville, which was explored by de Brazza and colonized by France. The Congo is one of the most linguistically diverse countries in Africa. The languages spoken most are French, Kikongo, Lingala, Swahili, and Tsiluba. The Congo as a whole had been plagued by outbreaks of violence, even though the Congo Wars supposedly ended in 2003. Between January and April 2024 alone, 900,000 people had been forced to flee their homes. Currently, 25.4 million people are food insecure in the Congo, and that includes 13.2 million children. 7.3 million people are currently displaced, of which 3.7 million are children. You will also find news about the rapid spread of the Mpox virus, Ebola, and COVID, draining a fragile health system. The displacement of people which are leading to these conditions are due to number one, armed conflict, number two, local intercommunal tensions, number three, land disputes, and number four, natural disasters. So, my dear, there lies the real truth, the true picture of the Congo. It is a miracle that any organization such as African Parks would even bother or risk working in the Congo. But the Congo is likely one of the most beautiful, stunning places in Africa. I mean, who has not heard of the Congo rainforest and basin, a mosaic of rivers, forests, savannas, swamps, flooded forests teeming with wildlife, gorillas, elephants, buffalo, and many, many other unique animals and birds. The Congo also has 3 mountain ranges and a low coastal plain. It is something so big, so unique, so beautiful, that there is no alternative but to try and preserve a portion of it. Anybody against preserving some of it should never, ever, ever speak on climate change again and should stop breathing oxygen. Because, like the Amazon and other places around the world, the Congo's rainforest and some of the other parts have to be preserved. That is what African Parks and the World Wildlife Fund are indeed trying to do. They are trying to help us breathe. Anyway, I get very heated. I'm very emotional about this. In Garamba, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is considered ground zero in the elephant poaching wars, rangers are facing militarized poachers who will stop at absolutely nothing to kill elephants for their ivory, to continue to fund their illegal activities. Besides protecting Garamba's remaining 1,300 elephants, the rangers are often the first responders for everyday civilians who are terrorized by the Lord's Resistance Army and other armed and dangerous groups who leave a path of destruction in their wake. Despite these threats, the rangers gear up and head out each day to patrol and secure the park and surrounding areas, serving as a lifeline for animals and people in the region. But hang on to your horses, because I have to tell you about the Baka people before we continue talking about the rangers. Not only those working for African parks, but also others working for other organizations such as the WWF and the Gorilla Trust, etc. Okay. Now, once again, Survival International, the ones who started this entire African parks and the Baka people debacle, brought the public under an utter, disgusting, false impression. They made you believe that the Baka inhabited a relatively small area and that the area now under conservation was a huge chunk out of their traditional land and hunting ground. I'm sorry, guys, that is not true, not even a little bit. It is false and a total lie. And later in the video, I will also tell you more about Survival International, but for now, I'm going to tell you about the Baka people. The Baka people are known in the Congo as Bayaka, and they are an ethnic group inhabiting the southeastern forests, listen carefully, of Cameroon, northern parts of the Republic of the Congo, northern Gabon, and southwestern Central African Republic. Then there's another issue. Other people of these regions are sometimes mistakenly named Baka because in the past they were grouped along with the Baka and the Twa and called pygmies, which is now considered an offensive or derogatory term. But in the past, they were called that because of their small or short stature. The Baka people are hunter-gatherers. They are on average about 5 foot tall and live a semi-nomadic life, although that is slowly changing, and they, or some of them, do prefer to now remain in a village setting. Before Survival International popped up with their dramatic tale, the biggest threat to the Baka was deforestation, for which they themselves are to a smaller extent responsible. It is estimated that there are currently about 30,000 true Baka spread over the area I told you about before. The southeastern forests of Cameroon, northern parts of the Republic of Congo, northern Gabon, and southwestern Central African Republic. Okay? The Baka establish temporary camps constructed of bowed branches and big leaves. They also cut trees and branches for firewood, spears, and fishing rods. They also love fishing, and they use a couple of hugely damaging methods to fish. The men use a chemical obtained from some plant material which they disperse downstream. The chemical is not toxic, but it deprives the fish of oxygen. They then float to the surface, and the Baka just collect as much as they need. Another method is called dam fishing, where they dig a short trench out of a river and they form a little dam at the end of this. And once there are fish in this dammed up area, the women and children take the water out of this little dammed area, enough for them to collect the fish by hand. As far as hunting goes, the group will remain in the area until it is hunted out, and then they will abandon their camp and move on. The other major issue is that where the Baka traditionally hunted and fished to feed themselves, this is no longer the case. Here is but one example. The Odzala-Kakawa National Park in the Congo, the exact park African parks are managing, is the main trafficking hub for pangolin scales to Asia. Pangolin scales are used in some traditional Chinese medicine, particularly in the northern region of the park. The Baka were very familiar with the market value of the pangolin meat and scales. It is guessed that the reason for this is the close proximity to Cameroon and better quality roads. Since 2017, the pangolin had been listed as nationally protected in a number of African countries due to the overexploitation of the poor animal. The Baka people are also not the only hunter-gatherer group who live in communities of varying sizes along the borders of the Odzala-Kakawa National Park. There is the Baka, the Mbengele, Luma, Twa, and Babangu. Numerous efforts had been made to meet with the people and negotiate viable solutions. And without going into the solutions and projects like cocoa plantations, etc., the Baka was the only group who did not respond. Anyway, the Baka hunts everything and anything, not just pangolin. They will hunt crocodile, pythons, buck, baboons, monkeys, bush pigs, etc., etc. Now, I do apologize. I do find some of the photographs upsetting, so I assume that you will too. So I'm skipping on too much photographic evidence, okay? But it is there on the internet for you to Google and look at if you are so inclined. So let's get back to conservation and ranges in Africa. Now, I'm not going to stick to African parks ranges because I do not have statistics for them. But most qualified game rangers are registered with or known to the Game Rangers Association of Africa. Or then the Game Rangers Association are in contact with the conservation bodies to get a tally on the rangers in their employ. The Game Rangers Association of Africa is a non-profit founded in 1970, and they provide support networks and representation for rangers across Africa. 2022 was a horrible year for rangers. The Game Rangers Association recorded 100 ranger deaths in Africa between June 2021 and July 2022. 95 of those were killed in the line of duty. 565 African rangers were killed in action between 2011 and 2022. Another survey by IUCN showed that 88.6% of rangers in Africa had faced a life-threatening situation, and I mean life-threatening by other humans while working. 66% of rangers had been attacked by poachers, and 82% had dangerous encounters with wildlife. So, I mean, compare the ratios for your souls. As far as the Congo is concerned, I do not have exact figures, but I found a few articles. In January 2021, 6 rangers were killed at the Virunga National Park in the DRC. In May 2023, 2 rangers were killed in the Congo. In December 2022, another 2 rangers were killed in the Congo. In a publication called Enact Africa, it is stated that since 2010, park rangers in the Congo are as threatened as the animals they are trying to protect. Because in the Congo, the rangers have to look out for terrorists and poachers. And make no mistake, whether the Baka or any other, they are becoming more and more sophisticated by the day, and bow and arrow are no longer these poachers' only means of hunting. They set deadly traps, they use netting, and guns are being utilized more and more. So to recap, in short, the Baka people, who are truly a minority, are spread over a huge area, of which the border of the national park run by African Parks is only a small, tiny portion. The park was proclaimed by the government, not African Parks. So the narrative that African parks are stealing land or taking land from the indigenous people is utter trash. It appears that Survival International does not know what the words national park actually mean. Then I can also tell you that African Parks did react to the allegations in June 2023 already. I received copies of the documentation dated and signed long before it was published in January 2024 in conjunction with local authorities as well as an independent legal entity. An immediate investigation was launched. The independent legal investigation was done by a London-based firm, Omnia Strategy LLP, and they involved two human rights legal counsels to investigate all allegations. African Parks also engaged a Baka anthropologist. It was found that some of the grievances were indeed already dealt with, and it was found that there were no basis or proof of some of the other allegations, and only two incidents where rangers were involved were proven to likely be factual and had a basis for prosecution. African Parks then went ahead and fired the rangers involved and handed them over to the national law enforcement authorities for prosecution. Now, I'm begging you to consider every word of my report, because none of what I said comes from a place of opinion or feelings. Every word is factual, researched over weeks, researched online, and comes as a result of responses to emails and phone calls. So, my friends, as someone who had lived all my life in Africa, had a lifelong interest in animal welfare and conservation, come from a family where my father was an honorary ranger, my brother was a ranger for a few years, where cousin's son is in conservation, and so on and so forth, I can tell you that for the sake of this continent, it is important that we keep an open mind and investigate every negative allegation ourselves before we speak our 2 cents worth. We cannot vilify African Parks for the deeds of 2 or 3 rangers out of 2,119. Human beings do nasty stuff. And this thing has happened in churches, yes, the Catholic and Protestant churches. It happened among teachers, policemen, doctors, dentists, etc. Yet, we are not cancelling and destroying churches, hospitals, and schools because 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000 clergy or teachers or nurses or doctors displayed criminal behavior. No, we revel when they get what they deserve and we move on. African Parks handled the situation in the correct and legal manner, and the criminals will be dealt with in the legal system by the police, lawyers, and a court of law. So now we need to move on and let African Parks continue doing the fantastic work they have done to date. There are bad apples everywhere, so don't destroy the good apples because of 1 or 2 bad apples. But if you think I'm done with this very, very long video, then you are wrong. I promised you I'll get back to Survival International, and I'm going to. So to start off with, I'm using Survival International's own website and own answers 2 questions. In their introductory paragraph, when asked who the Baka are, they go straight into accusing African parks and WWF of land theft and dispossession. I have already proven to you that there are national parks established by the governments of the Congo. Neither African parks nor WWF have the power to go into a country and just claim land for conservation. This particular notion is as insane as it sounds. Then, Survival International claims that neither the WWF nor African parks tackled the issue, etc., etc., and nor have they seen shock or surprise or apologies. Rubbish, word salad. What more was African parks or the WWF to do but investigate? First, those who they thought were guilty, and then to hand them over to the law and the courts of the country. Were they to hang them from the nearest tree and then pay the Baka people with rubber slops to speak to the media like Survival International did? Then Survival International goes on to demand that Prince Harry, as they call him, step down as director of African parks and publicly distance himself from African parks. I mean, how childish. This drama had nothing, nada, and zilch to do with Harry, who lives in California. The story came out in the media after the investigation had started, after the guilty were arrested. So what was Harry to say or do? And why should he step down? He's only one of 30 or more directors worldwide, and some of them are far more influential than him. It is ridiculous. And the only reason Survival International mentioned Harry was, of course, for attention, in my not so humble opinion. Survival International have been in operation since the late 60s. But if I look at the matters they get involved in over the last, say, 10 to 14 years, it is my opinion that they are becoming a liberal, obsessive group, almost, but not quite, like the Stop Oil group and those over-the-top groups. At least, if they continue on their current trajectory, they will end up like that. I mean, really, they are British-based, yet involve themselves with a large development in Botswana's Central Kalahari Game Reserve. I'm sorry, but once a group of foreigners become ridiculous and think they can come to Africa and tell us what to do and how to live, we will stop listening and ignore them. In Africa, you have to choose your battles. Also, other countries have to stop underestimating Africa. Yes, we have a lot which could be improved, but in general, African people are in many ways far more conservative and righteous than our liberal, woke brothers and sisters in Europe. Yes, money talks in Africa, but be careful. Not everybody is for sale. Do not judge the people by our politicians. Anyway, my dear friends, I hope this explains why I did not say much about the Baka narrative, and I hope this explains why Harry kept his mouth shut for change. And always remember that every story has two sides. The rest I'm leaving up to you to decide for yourselves where you stand on this. We are all adults and we can all think for ourselves and do not have to follow any specific narrative like a bunch of sheep. Phew, this was a mouthful and a lot of work and research, but as you could likely hear, a topic I am passionate about. You can stand on your head and whistle Dixie. I shall always be on the animal side. I talk to trees and I save insects and feed the birds. So that should explain a lot to you. So for now, my friends, go in peace. And if you are so inclined, add Africa and its beautiful wildlife and those who risk their lives to preserve it to your prayers tonight. And always remember to take care of yourselves until we meet again on the next one. Bye.